Hi everyone, welcome to the Panhandle Research and Technology Tour Plus, hosted by the Panhandle Research and Extension Center in Scottsbluff, Nebraska. This event was recorded on December 3rd, 2020.
So up next is Dipak Santra. He's our alternative crop specialist for the Panhandle, and he's going to talk about alternative crops for Nebraska. Take it away, Dipak.
Hello everybody, myself Dr. Dipak Santra, the alternative crops breeding specialist at University of Nebraska's Panhandle Research and Extension Center. Today I am going to talk about one of the alternative crops of my program, mint. Before doing that, to the mint specifically, I just want to give you a brief overview of my program so that you can realize the width and depth of my program and what are the different crops I work on. Primarily, I work on 4 different groups of people, 4 different crops, if you will. One first group is ancient grains. My primary focus is proso millet, commonly known as millet in United States. And primarily it is used for bird feed, so it is known as bird seed crops. But in very recent past, possibly the last 10 years or so, a significant amount of millet is being used for other purposes like human food or some alcoholic beverages like gluten-free beer, whiskey. The second group of major crops are oilseed crops. My primary focus on 2 different crops, sunflower, oil type, and winter canola. The third group of crops is pulses or grain legumes, or you can call as a beans, but it's not a dry bean, it's a bean family. 2 major crops I work on, field pea or field yellow pea or pea. Now, as you know, the primary protein source in United States or across the globe is mixed between plant and animal. And these days more focus is being given on non-GMO type plant source of protein, specifically for that millennial population. And the most important pulse crop in the United States is soybean, which is GMO, dry bean, yellow pea is next one, and then garbanzo bean and lentil. But my focus is majorly field peas. And other pulse crops, what I work on, fenugreek, which is an ancient medicinal crop. The fourth and last group of crops is miscellaneous industrial crops. For example, mint, industrial hemp, buckwheat. Today I am going to focus on mint, more about what results I have to share with you. So mint for western Nebraska. If you see this picture in the foreground is a mint trial, is a small trial, and the first replicated plots are labeled just to demonstrate that how the mint plots looks like. I'll get into more details later. Let us get into little bit introduction of the mint. Mint belong to a mentha species. There are about 25 different species of this kind of fragment herbs of Lamiaceae family. Major that native Eurasia, North America, South Africa, and Australia. I guess all over the globe the mint is native. There are 2 major types of mint, peppermint and spearmint. Both are used for flavoring for foods including candy, gums, liquors, and then dentifrices like toothpaste. The essential oil from mint also used as in perfume and herbal medicine. And the volatile oil, what is the active ingredient or the important component of the mint, is present both in leaf and stem, but primarily it is on leaf. Mint oil market shows the steady growth. If you see the graph on my left side, bottom left corner, the graph of both types of mints are kind of steady, although it's not a huge market, but the point is the mint oil market is a steady market in the United States. Who are the major producers? United States, India, and China are the 3 major producers across the globe. United States is the leader of peppermint oil production in the world. About 70% of global oil comes from United States. And the major states all within United States for peppermints are northwestern states, Oregon, Washington, Idaho, which account for about 84% of the total US peppermint oil. The western Nebraska agroclimatic condition, weather year to year, is very similar to the PNW states, Oregon, Idaho, and Washington. And that's the idea it came, why can't we grow mint in western Nebraska? And that's the whole project is about. Little bit economics, obviously that is important. What is the dollar value? Total mint market volume is about $200 million in United States, and peppermint oil is little bit more profitable than spearmint. As you see here, about $20 per gallon, whereas in spearmint about $17. If you see the graph on my right hand corner, top corner, that market price for peppermint and spearmint relatively remains same. Peppermint is higher, spearmint is lower from 2016, 17, 18. And the graph below that shows the total acres of production of the mint in 2013 to 18, and pretty steady, little bit ups and down, but that's the way it happens. So the objective of the whole project is to identify best varieties for both peppermint and spearmint for my western Nebraska farmers. What we did, we put a planted replicated plot trial using 6 peppermint, 6 spearmint, and 2 intermediate mint clones in first week of June, specifically June 2nd, 2018 at Scottsbluff under full irrigation. And row spacing was given about 22 inches and plant to plant distance was about 5 inches. 3 different types of mint what we used. Peppermint 6, which is indicated on my left side panel with a red arrow. Then spearmint, which is yellow. And then intermediate one, that Arvensis type. So these are the 3. So 6 plus 6 plus 2, total 14. Here is the trial what we are getting ready to harvest. If you see my left side, peppermint, we harvest once a year around mid-August. Whereas spearmint, we harvest twice. One is end of June to early July, and the second harvest in mid-September or third week of September. In the picture, Alison, my field technician, she is assisting us to harvest that. We use just standard hedge carter, at least for our case. Commercial scale, we use the forage harvester. For commercial farmers, they use just regular alfalfa harvester they used. They put together and then use it. What we did after that, after we harvest, we took some subsample, put in a dryer, dry it, then weigh the subsample. That's the way they estimate what is the total dry matter yield per plot. Based on that, we estimated the dry matter yield per acre. This slide shows the relative dry matter yield of all 3 types of mint, namely 6 peppermint, which are bottom graph. As you see that, the first one is black midge, then next one is M837, then Redefine B90-9, Roberts midge, then Todd's midge. You will see the full name in the next slides, but it shows the relative yield. The letter on top of the graph, the orange graph, A, B, C, D, indicate the common letter means if there are 2 adjacent graphs has same letter, that means they are not statistically significantly different, the yield. For example, that black midge and M83.7, first one has AB, second one has CD. That means these 2 varieties yields are significantly different statistically. Whereas black midge and B90-9 both has A, that means they are not statistically significant. That is a statistics. But relatively, if you see absolute number, B90-9 has the highest yield. Top right hand corner graph is for spearmint, same pattern, 6 spearmint, relative yield, the same letter indicates they are not statistically different. For example, Scotch 770 and N83.5, their letters are different, their yield is significantly different. Scotch 770 has a higher yield than N83.5, whereas it is not significantly different from natives just Scotch. So that relative yield of those 6 spearmint shows Scotch 770 has the highest yield. 2 Arvensis varieties, Arvensis 2 and 3, they are not statistically different, but clearly it shows Arvensis 2 has a higher yield, although not statistically different. Next slide is the oil, the most important things. How did we do the oil analysis? So we took a little bit of mint sample, fresh or dry. We just simply did water extraction or some aqueous solvent, depends on the protocol. After we got the crude oil, we run through mass spectroscopy. So this slide shows the different peak. As you see here on that top left hand corner, there are different peaks. Height of the peaks indicate the relative amount of each type. Now, as you see, there are probably 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 5 or 6 different peaks, but two major one, probably third one is you cannot ignore, but clearly there are two major one. And how do we identify those two? We have a standard from commercial available companies. We put that one, carbon and menthol. We put that, that's the way we identify. The peak means the carbon and menthol, they matches at that time. Those are the two known compounds, and that's the way we identify the which peak belongs to what. How do you quantify that different oil, the menthol and carbon? Then we have a different standard concentration, known concentration of different both menthol and carbon. We put that on the graph, which is on my top right hand corner. We put the concentration, which shows the mg of carbon per ml of that solvent extract, and their relative peak time. That's the way we can tell that, well, if the peak height is this much, if the area is this much, that corresponds to this much amount of carbon or menthol. So that's the way we identify which peak correspond to which oil and then what amount. That's the way we identify. And then we run all the samples. They get the relative amount for all the 14 mint varieties, and then we do the statistical analysis. Here is the two graph I am showing here. The left side graph is for 6 peppermint and right side graph is for 6 spearmint. As you see here, as I told, there are possibly 6 different peaks on that oil analysis. They are numbered on my x-axis, oil type, like first, second, third, fourth, fifth, sixth. Which one has the major? Clearly peppermint has the fifth type 5 has the major. Whereas my right side graph has the 6th one, which is major. Again, same thing you see that. Now let us focus on the major oil type. That the peppermint, as you see, that type 5, which is that menthol, and the spearmint, the number 6, which corresponds to carbon. As you see there, I put the relative amount. In peppermint, all 6 has the same letter A. That means their peppermint oil amount, which is menthol, they are not significantly different with respect to oil percent. Whereas the spearmint, there are a couple of lines which is a different letter. For example, the orange peak, which correspond to redefined Murray-Michman, that letter is different than others. That means that is significantly lower than other. Whereas other 5, they are not significantly different. What about that intermediate arvensis? Here it is. I just overlaid the same graph on peppermint because their oil is menthol type. Their appearance is like spearmint, but their oil tells me that is a peppermint type because they have menthol. Their oil relatively both are same, letter B, so they are not significantly different. That's the percent of oil we determined. And then we took that yield and multiply with the percent, determine that amount of oil yield per acre. These are the graph, 3 graph. It is where left side is the peppermint, right side is the spearmint, and the middle 2, they are intermediate type. If you see the relative, that x-axis is the varieties and y-axis is the percent of menthol, like amount of menthol, gram per 100 gram of dry matter. What we see here, you see all 6 peppermint varieties, all A. What we showed in the previous graph, there is no significant difference. Whereas spearmint, same thing, there is no significant difference. Whereas the intermediate 2 arvensis, there are difference. Arvensis 2 has a higher amount of menthol per gram, 100 gram of dry matter yield than the arvensis 3. What are the other traits we decide? We measured plant height and plant spread, that horizontal growth, and here the graph shows the relative vertical and horizontal growth of the 6 peppermint varieties. And it's not very critical, but as you see, not significant different, very similar. but Robert Mitchman looks like is little bit lower height as well as horizontal growth compared to others. Next slide shows other two types, spearmint on my left side and two intermediate type. Very similar picture except one spearmint, all other very similar. And Arvensis 2 and 3 looks like Arvensis 3 and both are similar, but Arvensis 3 is a taller variety. That's what it shows. So these are the different measurements we took. You remember what is the objective? Objective was to identify the best performing varieties for western Nebraska. Here is the summary. What are the summaries? As I told, there are peppermint and intermediate type, the Arvensis. The major oil is menthol. I showed you in the previous slides. Spearmint has carbon. With respect to dry matter yield, they range from about 7,000 pounds per acre to about 2,000 pounds per acre. But B90-9 has the highest yield in the previous slides I showed you. And in fact, that is the variety that at least one farmer in that valley, he is using that particular variety. So that's good that he selected the right variety. Intermediate type, Arvensis 2 has a significantly higher yield than Arvensis 3. Spearmint, Scotch 770 has close to 6,000 pounds per acre compared to native, which is about 3,200 pounds per acre. But we do not sell with respect to dry matter yield. What is the oil amount, pounds per acre? Peppermint, B90-9, 70, whereas Robert Mitchman is 20, maybe because of the dry matter yield difference, as you see the above. Intermediate type, Arvensis 2, 116. Spearmint, 124 has the Scotch, and 55 is the native. Remember the objective? Objective was to identify the best performing varieties, and what is the matrix for the best performing varieties? The variety which probably will give more dollar per acre. Which one is that here? Peppermint, intermediate, and spearmint. Both peppermint and intermediate Arvensis type has the same oil, menthol. Clearly, that Arvensis, both Arvensis 2 and 3 are better than any of the 6 peppermints. Specifically, Arvensis 2, at least based on this trial, is significantly higher menthol yielder than any of the 6 peppermint or Arvensis 3. Best peppermint variety has about 70 pounds per acre menthol, whereas the intermediate, the Arvensis 2, is 116, which is almost 1.2, like 2x, almost 2x, 80% more. Clearly, if you grow that particular variety Arvensis 2 on the same acre of land instead of B90-9, you are expected to get about 80% more oil per acre, correspond to 80% more profit, because you are not growing more acres, same acre. So the correct selecting the right variety is that very important here. Dan Fitt, the mint grower in the valley, only one I know of, he selected B90-9 because that is the older variety he found in the market. Arvensis 2 and 3 are relatively newer one. That's sort of the significance of my trial. I found the Arvensis 2. So next time when I see Dan, but my recommendation would be, why don't you try Arvensis 2 instead of B90-9? At least grow side by side, see what it does to your farm or any other farmer. That would be my recommendation, Arvensis 2 or Arvensis 3. Although there is significant difference, if you do not find Arvensis 2, go for Arvensis 3. Still that is better than best performing peppermint B90-9. The spearmint, obviously Scotch, native Scotch is the best one among all 6. But if you want to grow spearmint or not, Dan started both peppermint and spearmint. He gave up the spearmint because spearmint needs 2 separate operations, at particularly harvesting. As I shown you before, peppermint harvested once, spearmint harvested twice. So it needs more time commitment. If it doesn't make much economic sense, then why to grow spearmint? That makes sense. That's why Dan grows only peppermint. If you have any question, I put my email address at the first slide. I'm telling it again, dsantra2@unl.com. My phone number 308-632-1244. You can directly reach out to me for specific to any mint or any other of my alternative crops what I showed you in the first slide. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Dipak, for that presentation on mint spearmint and mint. We've got some questions that have come in the chat. I'll read them here for you. Let's see. From Andrew Preston, he asks, how much and what type of fertilizers were used in the mint plots?
The total nitrogen was about, I think, 240 pounds per acre, which calculated as 330 kilogram per hectare. And that was applied in two different times. One is in the spring and other after harvesting the last harvest of spearmint in the end of September. And nitrogen source is predominantly urea, but there was also about 20 or 25 pounds per acre sulfur, which we put in the form of ammonium sulfate. So we just calculated how much ammonium sulfate is necessary for that required dose of sulfur, and the remaining amount of nitrogen we used urea.
I got a related question to Andrew's. I'm wondering if it's known what the relationship is between different fertilizers and the oil amount that you get out. I assume you get more oil with more, but maybe it plateaus, or maybe that's not known. Oh, Bijesh says fertility trial will be initiated next year. Okay, very good.
Yep,
very good.
We have a follow-up grant from the same funding agency, BJS and me, who will be doing that. Initially, since I had no idea, I just contacted Dan, whatever he follows. Now, as you imagine, 240 or around 250 pounds per nitrogen is probably more than even irrigated corn, what it does to the water quality. And that's the project would be for next 2-3 years with the BJS. With respect to your question, Jeff, in general, if the oil is the primary component, then sulfur is necessary. That's why sulfur must be included in canola, in sunflower. That is important, and that mostly both it impacts both quantity as well as quality. What type of oil? Because sulfur containing, I do not know the biochemical pathway, but yes, sulfur is recommended for all oilseed crop in general.
Very good. Thanks, Deepak. Bob Harbison, our very own Bob Harbison, asks which of those spearmint varieties was so susceptible to rust? So apparently you had one that was rust susceptible.
Yeah, Bob, I do not remember that. I need to get back to that, my field book. I do not remember that, but yes, there is one particular, I think, Bob, one particular type of mint which are susceptible. Probably
it really got slammed, whatever that was. You could see it really easily.
Oh yeah, but in general, the spearmint, I remember picture clearly, spearmints are relatively susceptible. I do not see that kind of rust in peppermint. And among the spearmint, one was real bad.
Yeah,
I do not remember that name. I need to get that.
Well, I got another one too. While I got you on the thing, is it?
Sure.
Did biomass, was there a direct correlation with that and the mint or the chemical production? I mean,
yes. Both factors
produce greater amount of oil.
Yes, greater amount of oil is the predominantly impacted by that biomass yield, but also the percent of oil. There is a difference in percent of oil, but that contribution is not that much. But major contribution is biomass yield, yes.
Andrew Preston asks another question. He says, how long is mint productive in Washington, Idaho, Oregon, etc., before it must be replanted?
Well, based on my limited information, as you know, I started this just for 3 years ago. Productive mint, if you can maintain carefully, because there is some other soil-borne diseases are predominant, and that area where the mint has been historical there, which is absent so far at our location, is about 5 years.
You know, another a question I've got, Deepak, is quality a concern in any of this? Are there other oils that are present in some varieties that can give an off flavor, or other chemical reactions that can interact with Cavanol or one of the other chemistries that is, possibly interacts with environment and things of that nature?
In literature, I did not see any of those kind. In my 14 the different like 6 spearmint, 3 peppermint, 2 intermediate do not seem significant different, except I remember that spectrum. One variety had a third peak, which is probably about less than 5% of total. The two predominant, like more than 90% of the oil, either menthol for peppermint or carbon for spearmint. But so in literature, I did not see any report of that kind. When oil is either one type, predominantly 90% and above, I do not know how that minor oil they will interact with respect to their performance in the field or their end use product. I do not know that.
Mhm.
I would assume possibly not very much, because
Well, I know you're
because the peppermint oil and spearmint oil, they have two distinct type of product
right,
line.
right.
Primarily because of the major oil, which is 90 above percent.
Mhm. Well, I know since the entomology plots are downwind of your mint plots that we had a very nice smelling field this year.
Yeah, no, if you see that, I tested just freshly both peppermint and spearmint, and also just for the sake of, because they're not poison. So I tested all the varieties.
Mm.
I did not see any significant taste difference with each group based on my taste bud, but there is a clear distinction between peppermint and spearmint. Spearmint is more pleasant. I can chew a handful of spearmint leaf, but I cannot do same thing for peppermint. And that is predominantly because of probably oil.
Well, it'd be kind of fun to do like a taste panel.
Yeah, just like
maybe during
like tea tasting or wine tasting, that kind of things.
Yeah, just put leaves in front of people and we can taste them.
Yeah.
You know, because one of the things I remember on the when Gary was helping out with the barley study, that some of those not barley hops, that some of those hops had varied depending on variety.
Oh, yeah.
They're different smell, different
Yes.
tastes.
Yes.
And I remember not realizing before having tasted them or smelled them that there was that big a difference between hop varieties.
Yes. Like we know just mint, but two major groups, two distinct tastes, two distinct use. Now, what is the difference within the variety across the variety within each group? Probably not much, and I do not see any literature. In fact, similar kind of things I have seen in my fenugreek. Although there are not two different types of major groups, but I have seen that kind of things. And other positive things in mint, since you are talking in entomology perspective, they are great pollinators. They attract lots of pollinators, huge.
Yeah, I've noticed that quite a bit. The only other crop I've seen that has like that we've grown at the center that has a lot of pollinators. Canola is another one that you've grown that always has a lot of pollinators in it. And then black-eyed peas.
Yep. Not all black-eyed pea. Not all black-eyed pea. The cultivated black-eyed pea I did not see. I had a couple of lines which are predominantly very late, excellent for forage or cover crop. They attract tons of that kind of bugs.
Yeah, really interesting. I think Bob Harbison's asked, and I think you're working with Dan. He says, is Dan Fitz still growing mints? I think that's the grower that you cited earlier.
He started with both peppermint, spearmint. Later on, he gave up spearmint because of obvious reason. He could not manage that two different harvesting along with all other things. So he is predominantly growing peppermint.
Andrew Preston asks another question. What is the water demand for mint?
No study. Now we have just estimated just full irrigation based on our observation. Is hot, temperature is too high. We were watering, I do not remember the details, every alternate day when it is really hot. Otherwise, it is twice a week. And I do not remember how long we just kept our just sprinkler. There was no that kind of study. That probably another study, water, right? We started with genetics. Now we are going to fertilizer. Next, probably water. We do not know
So-
precisely.
Sounds like a good project for Shin.
Yes. But yes, I talked with Dan, is a high water requiring crop, as you imagine. Water and nitrogen is the primary function of the biomass. It's just not seed or seed quality. Like wheat, if there is lack of water, yield will go down, protein will go up. Pea, like pulse crops, particularly primary field pea, I know water stress, less yield, but protein quantity will go up. But this is a different beast, the biomass. So you need to make sure the plant do not get stressed. Now, what will be the impact on oil? Based on basic biology, based on basic plant physiology, yeah, if you get water stress, they will get lots of more secondary metabolites, or these oils are nothing but secondary metabolites. So I'm expecting higher oil. I'm expecting more diverse oil if you put water stress. But that is not the primary contributor to get most amount of oil per acre. So make sure you have plenty of water. So that is, in fact, BJS and me, we talk, you are putting 250 pounds nitrogen, you are putting full irrigation as much as you can. What will be the impact of our nitrogen leaching to the groundwater? Do we need to put that much nitrogen? So those are the questions follow up, it will come. In order to make the full story, yes, we have few years to do, but again, it will depends on funding. Right now, we have some funded project for fertility. We'll see what we can do with respect to water if we can. Otherwise, next probably with seed.
So is this is mint seeded in with a drill?
No, it's just like your backyard planting, tomato seedling planting. That's what we did. First year we planted, is it perennial? We planted. I had no idea all these things. I just got some garden tool from my home, and Vaughn, Alisa, and myself, Ritu, we were just walking, like basically crawling and planting. That's why my plot was single row. I could not put it, and also I could not estimate that how many clones we need. These are vegetatively propagated. I just ordered the clones, but with the fertility trial, we are considering doing something different.
So is it all clonally propagated, or is it?
Yes,
is
yes,
there,
commercially,
okay.
yes.
How is Dan planting his? You know, when he was
He has some, I do not know the mechanism. I think very much like what we used to plant that large scale vegetable planting, similar kind of mechanism. He has some machinery what he uses. He doesn't do like way I planted for sure. And I do not have that option. I cannot do that planting because that needs a commercial scale. And my plot would be at the most 10 feet by 20 feet.
Yeah, so something like you use for a seedling planter for
yes, something like
seedling
Nevin
cabbage or
and
something.
Nevin,
Yeah.
I think did play with that for rubber dandelion, similar kind of things.
Mm-hmm.
And we discussed about that, and that needs a specialized, I have to order oil in advance. But with respect to my commercial source of the clone, I don't think I'll be able to do that option. So I may have to go hand planting again.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Well, let's see. Any more questions from the audience? Not seeing too many here, Deepak. I think that's all the questions that I had.
Yep.
Anything that you wanted to follow up with?
With respect to this work or in general?
Maybe with respect to this work or?
Well, as I indicated, the most important thing next is obviously fertilizer, then water, and then my goal is to probably using some selected lines, do a little bit farmers field demonstration side by side, just to see how that work in the farm scale, because where my data is based on the 10 feet long row, and that's nothing. Now, will it remain the same way in the farmer's field? I do not know. So now I just did the at primary level selection, then using maybe the most important line, I have to do at farmer's field and see what we get from there. So that's there's another one. Otherwise, I cannot confidently tell whatever I found here with my single row, 10 feet long row, it will remain same performance in the farmer's field. So
Very
those are the
good.
few follow-up things. And other follow-up things, what I was wondering one day, after water extraction, after the simple distillation process, the biomass is a byproduct. What is the feed quality of the biomass? I presume it will be acceptable if you can supplement with some other high value feed. Can that be used in the feedlot, which is our local demand, local sink? So suppose Dan or any in the farmer, they are growing that, instead of dumping that biomass in the field or somewhere else, maybe that can be used for feedlot. So that is another direction of feedlot research with a new feedlot person. Of course, God knows when he will be here, depends on COVID and all these things. But that's my long-term goal, just to start doing that.
Yeah, it could have value in a beef feedlot. I'm guessing it would have negative value perhaps in a dairy feed, in a dairy
Yes.
lot.
Yes, it's a primarily it will be a beef.
You would have yeah,
No.
you know,
That's
peppermint, spearmint flavored milk, I think.
Yeah, that's an added item to it. So
Correct. It will be a
I
value
suppose
add-
if you're making desserts, it would be okay.
it will be value addition to that. So
yeah, put breakfast cereal.
yep, yeah.
Yeah.
One more follow-up statement I'll just tell. I did not destroy the plot, what I had the trial. I am done with that area. So next year, I think there will be plenty of mint leaf. If you guys need, you want to make some dessert or just extract the mint oil for your home, you are welcome. You'll see that.
All right. Well, and you have at least one variety out there that's really, really super productive. So
Yep.